from Screen Junkie Studios in the heart of Los Angeles, this is Screen Junkies Movie Fights. Now your host, Andy Signore.
Hello, Screen Junkies. I am not Andy Signore. Andy is away on assignment. I am Dan Merle, and we are here for a very special edition of Movie Fights. Cars 3 is hitting theaters this weekend, and we thought, what better time to do Pixar fights? So we are doing a fight with all things Pixar today. We are talking about things like the best vocal performance in any Pixar movie. Who's the best Pixar character? And we're going to have our panelists pitch me the best explanation for the Cars universe, and the best one wins. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we are super excited to have a very talented, very prestigious panel of fighters with us today. First of all, the gentleman on my left, you might remember him from our debut deathmatch. He made a big splash earlier this year. A lot of people wanted to see him back. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Ed Greer. Ed, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back, Dan. This is a great opportunity to talk about some stuff I really like and to give the fans what they want. Some more dumbness.
More dumbness. That's the slogan of this show. Movie fights, we bring more dumbness. Sitting next to Ed, she made a big splash. She started at the beginning, and she was one of the two last fighters standing on our Collider edition of Last Fighter Standing. She is a writer and a producer at Collider. Perry Nemiroff. Perry, welcome back.
Oh, thank you for having me back. I think the only way that I was possibly going to walk into this just a little less nervous than usual is having this being the next thing after what we did last time with the whole Collider team, because that Last Fighter Standing thing was intense.
That was a good time, and I have some sympathy because that happened to me too. I started at the beginning, got all the way to the end, and just came up short. So welcome back. This is a regular fight. You're not going to have to fight off a whole gang of people, just these two
Sounds
guys.
good to me.
And finally, we are so happy to have this guy. He's the host of Cinemaholics, and you may have seen something on the internet called the Pixar theory, which kind of suggested a way that all of the movies could be interconnected. He's the guy behind it. Please welcome John Negroni. John, welcome to Movie Fights. Thank you for coming, by the way.
Thanks for letting me come on and have some fun with you guys. I'm so ready to do Movie Fights for the first time.
Now, the Pixar theory kind of blew up and took the internet by storm. Was that something you expected, or were you just kind of sitting around going like, hey, I have some interesting ideas about how these movies are maybe all connected together?
Literally that. I was just like, this might be interesting, and I spent a lot of time on it, and then for some reason, people were like, yeah, I believe you and trust you, and it's been weird ever since. But, hopefully we can have some cool stuff coming out eventually. Like, there's like an updated, like new and improved kind of Pixar theory maybe coming in the works. So that
Pixar
might be fun.
2.0.
Yeah. Especially for the haters.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you for bringing your expertise to this show. And because I'm sitting here, that means we have to have somebody checking all the facts, and that is why we have our own game master, Lon Harris. Lon.
That's me.
Thank you for filling in over on the fact-checking cam.
Oh, my pleasure to be here for Pixar Fights. I may have just met all of you, but I love you.
Oh, Lon is Lon's the most lovable guy in the office. We all just go give him a hug when we're feeling bad. Like he's like a walking Pixar movie. Lon, thank you so much. We'll be going to you when we need some clarification on the facts.
I'll be here.
And guys, before we start, just a reminder, this is, of course, your picks are important, but this is based on the arguments. I will be judging you based on your creativity, based on your passion, and just overall clarity of arguments. So just because you picked what you think is the right answer doesn't necessarily mean it's the best argument. You got to defend those picks. Any questions?
Good to go.
Pretty good.
All right, then let's get it on. Let's start the fight.
Hear the music.
What a lovely day! Are you not entertained?
Let them fight.
Very appropriate for Pixar fights. Yeah. It's all ultra-violence. All right, guys, round one of our Pixar fight. A lot of these questions came from fans. We got a lot of great questions from fans on Twitter. We asked for some Pixar questions. This comes from @SinatraFrank151, who I'm just going to assume is the actual Frank Sinatra. Sure. From wherever, from the grave, and a big Pixar fan, wants to know who is the best Pixar character. Now, a lot of great choices here, a lot of really good ones to choose from. I think everyone's going to pick, to say up front, everyone's going to pick really good characters, so this is all about defending yours and also telling me why your pick is better than the other two. Ed, I will start with you.
Okay, my character that I picked was Carl Fredricksen from Up. I really feel as though Carl out of all the characters in Pixar's canon, he's one of the best designed. He's got this nice little blocky look to him. Even his eyebrows are blocky, his hair is blocky, his face is blocky. And it's for a reason, because he's boxed into his reality right now. Like, and he's also just sort of a resistant little dude, you know? So I think he's very uniquely designed in regards to, they said like he could only turn his head 15 degrees or so before he had to turn his whole body to represent how old he was. And also, he that movie was one of the only two animated movies to be nominated for a Best Picture Oscar, along with Beauty and the Beast. So I feel like if you have a dude that central to a story that got a Best Picture nom for an animated movie in a time where they didn't just hand those out like candy, I feel as though that is a strong opening statement for why Carl is the man.
Very good opening statement, Ed, and we'll hear a lot more from you about Carl. Perry, what's your choice?
Surprise, surprise, I'm going with Wall-E. And I'll get the obvious out of the way first. I'm picking Wall-E for one reason, because clearly he is the cutest freaking thing ever. Wall-E spurned like so many toy creations. Like someone created a Lego out of Wall-E. That's just how much people love Wall-E, and they want to own Wall-E in so many different forms. But then just talking about him as a character in the actual movie, look at the beginning of that movie. It is really mind-blowing how much character they get across in those opening sequences, when Wall-E's a character that doesn't really speak at all, and still in those opening sequences they throw in so much detail as to, you know, who Wall-E is, the fact that he's a diligent worker and he's going to keep doing what he's doing, yet he also gets distracted, and all the little things he picks builds so many layers within minutes. And then the second Eve comes in, there's a whole new side to Wall-E. And then the second he gets to the Axiom, it continues to build. And even though I think Wall-E is more so about Wall-E as a character being true to who he is and changing everybody around him, he still is really great at adapting to his surroundings. And then just talk about the animation. When Wall-E came out, that kind of changed the game in a whole new way for Pixar. The level of detail in that animation, and specifically Wall-E as a character himself, the functionality of that character and how they worked it in, it's absolutely stunning, and it inspired Pixar to take some risks, make some characters that are a little offbeat, and try new design elements. So I think Wall-E is hands down the best.
All right, an argument for Wall-E. John, who did you pick as the best Pixar character?
I went with, and this was tough because I wanted to pick a Pixar character that just has so much that we can learn from him. So I picked Woody from the Toy Story movies. One of the advantages here is that we spent a lot of time with Woody. And we, like I said, have learned so many things from a character who in every single movie he's been in, he has been so different in each one and yet still entirely the same. When we start with him, he's this character who is so believable in the way that he experiences like human emotions without it being, even though he's still like a toy. It has always struck me to be so amazing. He's an iconic character. He's a character who, he reacts to these situations in all three of the movies that even I'm sitting there and I'm wondering, what would I even do in that situation? So when he makes mistakes, I actually, for a moment, am thinking, I can't blame him. He's a character full of empathy. He's a character who we've stuck with for all of these movies, and we just keep getting more and more out of his stories and how he's still the heart of the Toy Story movies 3 movies later. It's amazing. So yeah, undisputable. I mean, if you take a look at everything that he offers, everything that he contributes to the entire Pixar canon of movies, he has done the most work, and should be the most respected as the most well-rounded Pixar character.
All right, 3 great choices. Carl from Up, Wall-E, and Woody. Again, you guys have to get into why your choice is the best out of those 3. Duke it out.
Oh man, I mean, they're all really great characters, first off, but I think Carl might be the easiest one to eliminate, just because Carl is special because of the situation he's in. So much of him comes from Russell and everything that's happening around him, and even though he does have his moment at the end where he changes, he is a cold character for 95% of the movie. And when we're talking about
Carl, though, is same thing with Wall-E, is that I think it's really weird to take a Pixar character who's one half of a romance. because so much of both Wally and Carl is wrapped up in Ellie. So I'm not convinced that either of those characters is the best character in their own movie because they're so reliant on the Eve character and the Ellie character.
Wally's not. He has his relationship with Eve. He has the beginning, the first act of the movie, where it is just him being him, and then he also has the Hal, the cockroach. But then there's also the third act of the movie when he has a responsibility to make sure the greater good happens and they get back to Earth.
I think he's very reactive during those scenes, though. Like, a lot of the stuff that happens toward the end is all spurred on by Eve, and he's like, I mean, in the very end, it's not really him who saves the day, it's Eve.
Eve and everybody around him. And he's also, you bring up the fact that Woody's an inspiring character. Look at Wally, because sometimes we just need to take a step back and think, look at how Wally is driven by the simple things in life, those little tiny things that just make him happy, and the fact that, of all things, true love that drives him to do incredible stuff.
If I could just jump in here. Honestly, I don't even get what we're fighting about here. That's my opening gambit all the time. I don't even know why this is a thing. That's what I always do. But honestly, I mean, we've got a robot who never countermands his programming. Every single improvisation, single improvisation he does is to do this central thing he was supposed to do, which is clean up, and he gets maybe a new goal when he starts stalking some space broad. He gets a new goal. That's not a romance. Cool, it's one way, baby. She's got laser guns, and she don't need no man. And here comes Wally trying to roll up in her life, literally. and you talked about he had unique design elements. He's a sawn-off Johnny 5. He's a sawed-off Johnny 5. That's not a unique design element at all. It's the direct opposite of that.
Eve is a way better design.
Woody, you don't get off, buddy. You're a robot, too. Woody's just a stupid robot. Me love Andy. Me need to be with Andy. Blah, blah, blah. At least Carl has his own freaking goals.
Motivations, though, that no other Pixar character has.
Carl has unique motivations. He wants to put his freaking house on a mountain.
Yeah, but those are inconsistent motivations because he's like, I'm an adventurer.
You bring up a good point, though, with Andy, too, because one of your arguments was that Wally is just about his love for Eve and Carl is just about his love for Ellie. Look at Woody. That's part of the reason why I didn't choose Woody, is because Woody isn't as special and as memorable without the other toys in Andy's room and without his relationship to Andy.
Totally disagree, because all of Woody's most important scenes don't have Andy in them. They're always Woody coming to terms with, first of all, it's the existential questions in Toy Story 2. There's all of the humor that he adds. You both mentioned characters that I would argue for most of their movies aren't very funny, but everything that happens with Woody
at least
is
my
so
character,
human.
But honestly, on some real stuff, my character is not an automaton. My character, at the very least, is flesh and blood with real people concerns. That the aging montage with him and his wife and how they couldn't afford all the stuff because life got in the way. Life doesn't get in the way for a freaking robot or a dumbass toy. But life does not intrude their lives. Because they're not alive. Because your guys are not alive. My guys alive. Your guys are not alive. My guys alive.
I think the court will cede the point that Carl is a human being and that these two are not human beings. I think we'll cede that point.
And due to the fact of that, they are harder to be the best character because they're harder to be characters in the first place when they're not even real.
But
I know we're talking about animated movies, but still.
Carl is humorless and he's pretty joyless.
He's
and
not.
most people say that most of Up isn't all that great compared to
He goes from being a robot who's a robot, and you go from being a toy who's a toy, and he goes from being he goes to a Dark Knight Returns change. He can't even move his neck. He rides a thing.
Really fun and joyful.
He rides up the stairs on a freaking Gremlins machine that takes old people up the stairs. By the end, he's doing monkey bars on a dirigible because he's awakened. He's a new man from his adventure.
Everything Woody does has so much more agency. Everything that he does is so much more compelling in all three movies.
What does he do on his own?
Everything Wally does
because
is
everything in the
compelling.
second half of Wally is a chase scene where we're just watching him.
That's not true at all. It's a chase.
It's
a chase scene with purpose, not only for him and for Eve, but humanity and existence.
But
and also,
all through those moments, he's a symbol,
Wally is
not a
an
character.
absolutely hilarious character, especially in that opening bit where he doesn't even speak. There's so many little movements and gestures that make you one laugh and smile. If anybody out there watches Wally with a scowl on their face,
I know. I think trust me. I argued for Wally as most adorable character ever, and was trounced, even though I was better than my opponents, because of the fact that one of the things I was arguing against was a Mogwai. They suck. Nobody likes them, but a Mogwai with fur and Babe the pig beat Wally. And I'm sorry, it's because Wally's a robot, and it's hard to identify with him. Now, one thing I will say is
identifying with Wally is hard,
that's the
but
whole
identifying
point in the opening sequence. It's not hard to identify with Wally.
It's the second best montage.
That's the whole point. It's the
yeah.
whole point of the opening
But
sequence
that's what I'm
is to give him humanity and show that yes, he was a robot, but he has these special quirks, and that's why he's unique and he's special.
I absolutely agree that Wally's opening was the second best
But
super dope
here's a
introduce
little
us to
difference.
a character
Because-
montage in the world, but mine was the first. Carl's montage makes people cry who don't even see the rest of the movie.
But here's the problem. Both of your movies are half of a good movie. I think that all the Wally and Carl stuff that's good is only in the first half. Whereas Toy Story is a fully good movie 3 times, and it's such a good character. And unlike
also
Wally and Carl,
we're judging the
people can
Your
character, not the movie.
your character is Kevin Durant. He's on a great
But that
team,
means something.
and that's
When
why
the
he
movie- when the
wins. But it's
character
not
carries the
because
movie.
he's so great. Your character's on
Yeah,
a
it
great
is.
team.
Yeah,
Your
because
character's
it's plot
Steve Kerr
driven.
on the old Bulls.
I feel like I've heard a lot about Carl and Wally, but I do want to hear a little bit from you, Perry, about Woody, particularly why you think that Woody is
Why
not.
I think
why
Woody
you think
is
that Woody
not.
is not, as good as your pick or.
Well, part of the
Ed's.
reason why Wally is the best character is because whereas both the Oscar, Woody is great in 3 films. We're not talking about the film. We're talking about the character. And the cool thing about Wally is that movie. He drives the entire movie, and it is so incredibly well structured with his journey being different in the first act, second act, third act. His whole experience there is moving every single step of the way, and every step of the way he accomplishes something completely different that adds to his character. And the point of Wally is that he is a robot with a personality and with humanity. I'm not just talking about his relationship with Eve. It's his relationship with everything and how he processes everything that's happening around him. So he is not literally human, but he is just as human as someone like Carl.
I'm going to take that's a great closing statement for Wally. I think that's great. So Perry, I think it's a great one for Wally. Ed, give me a closing statement on Carl. Why Carl? Again, not so much why he's a great character, but why is he better than their 2 choices?
Well, again, he is better than their 2 choices because, number one, he is a human being with an actual human journey. Now, obviously, this movie is very whimsical. He's half the movie, he's towing a house on balloons, so we're not dealing with reality here, but it does show some of the realities of life. You don't always get to do what you want to do in the time that you want to do it. Sometimes you do need to pursue your goals when it's supposedly too late, and guess what? You'll find on the off times when you do what you want and you really pursue your goals, it's never too late, and you can do what you want. And that is a message that is really dope, and it's better than the slavish devotion of a robot and a toy.
All
Period.
Right. All right, so Ed, that's a closing on Carl. And then John, close me out on Woody. Why is Woody better than these 2 choices?
I think one of the things we're overlooking here is that, what are the things that these characters want? That's so much of what makes a good character. What Carl wants to do is very simple. He wants to go to Paradise Falls, and honestly, his mission is mostly symbolic, and it's not very consistent with how he reacts with Russell for most of the movie. That's why the movie, for me, isn't as great. I don't think he's a great main character. And I would say for Wally, it's the same kind of thing. You have this character who's 2 things, cuteness and whimsy, and I think the movie gets that in the first half, and the second half, Eve steals all of his scenes. But in Toy Story, you have 3 movies with 3 separate individual story arcs, all championed by this one Woody character, that even though the movie's about a toy who, we're not told that he's a toy acting like a person. We have to connect with a toy, a thing that you said wasn't alive, and they pull that off. That is what makes him so different from all the other Pixar characters, is that they did it 3 times and with a 3-movie act. What other character in fiction history has had such an amazing journey, from movie to movie, of it's everything from loyalty, feeling like you're getting replaced, feeling like, how am I, dealing with the idea that you're going to die and get thrown away or put into storage, and then moving on to loving somebody new. These are all things that aren't over reliant on Andy. They just show how human a toy can be, and to me, that's way more interesting.
All right. That was wow. I'm gonna use Lon's time to
Yeah.
look at my notes here because those were really great arguments. Lon, anything we need to clean up there?
I didn't see any major fact issues. It seemed like a pretty clean round. On Twitter, we had a lot of support for Inside Out and Monsters, Inc. characters that weren't mentioned. Joy and sadness coming up a ton. A question about would we have accepted Riley as a choice because she embodies all of those emotional characters.
Proceed with caution, I would say.
I would not.
You have to be very careful.
Slippery when wet.
Very slippery slope there.
Also, a lot of people surprised Buzz Lightyear didn't come up, considering that Woody was a choice. Many people, John upset by saying that he feels that Wall-E and Up fall off in the second half. There was a lot of pushback on the internet about that. And then Tom, our viewer, is going to try the Wall-E Watch with a Scowl challenge. So he will tell us. He's going to tell us how that goes.
I love it. And I should mention, Lon, we have two offices, and once in a while it's a little. Mike Carlson did it once,
yes.
Or more than once.
It has happened to the best of
I should
us.
mention that we have a fan joining us today right next to you, Richard Higginbotham.
Hey.
Richard, welcome.
What's up?
Welcome to Movie Fights.
Thank you.
Excited to be at
It's good to be
Pixar
here.
Fights.
Yeah, especially with my sister. You can't see her right now, but she doesn't really know much about movies, no offense. But we grew up on Pixar, so it's good to be here on this fight. So thank you for having us.
Awesome. Well, Richard, thank you for coming, and I'm going to be going to you during the speed round and maybe during the show also to get your thoughts, because I can already tell these are going to be some very difficult decisions to make. And to get to this decision, I think that Ed, Perry, and John, I hear your argument about the fact that Carl is a human, that it's a little easier to relate to him because he's the emotion of the story and everything. But I feel like they kind of argued both of their characters and knocked you out a little bit, and that was a big part of your argument. So I had to eliminate Carl. For me, it came down between Wall-E and Woody, and I think Perry and John, you both made really good arguments. Perry talking about the fact that the whole first act, and you connect with him even though you're just watching him go about his business, and John kind of talking about the overall arc of Woody. And I think really the closing statement is kind of what put me over the top. You two were neck and neck, but John, I think you had the advantage with Woody of having a character who had a 3-movie arc, who you could kind of point out a little bit more of a character detail about his journey and why that made him a stronger character. So I'm going to give that first point to John. But very close, very good job, everybody.
Thanks, though. Wall-E, if you're listening, I love you.
That should also be the slogan of Movie Fights. It hurts.
I would like to apologize to Wall-E, too. I love Wall-E.
Let's move on to
poll results.
Oh, yes. Lon, I'm so sorry. What were our poll results?
The internet largely agreed with you. 51% for Woody, 32% for Wall-E, 17% for Carl Frederick.
All great characters, though. And this is going to be a recurring theme, I think, on today's fight, because Pixar has so many fun movies that, I think there's easy answers for every round. But let's move on to round 2. And this is another Twitter question. It comes from DXArth Vaders. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that phonetically. Who asks, what is the best vocal performance in any Pixar movie? Now, this is different from the character. They've had, a parade of A-listers that have done performances of all their characters, but which one stands out to you as the best? And this time, we're going to start with Perry.
All right. I am saying Amy Poehler as Joy. And really, I don't think it's any contest, no matter who comes up in this fight, because the thing about her vocal performance as Joy is a a character that only works because of the way that Amy Poehler delivers every single line. That is a character that is... she is Joy. She's enthusiastic, she's chipper, and she could run the risk of being obnoxious. So you need to have someone like Amy Poehler who can toe that line between, one, expressing that, but never becoming annoying. And then also, Joy's whole arc in that movie is that she has to come to terms with the fact that sadness needs to be in control sometime. And Amy Poehler manages to do that, and it is definitely, there's a lot of other factors in play too, but largely because of her vocal performance, you can see that Joy stays Joy. She stays true to her emotion, but she also comes to accept and understand that they need to work together, and sometimes Joy can't be front and center because Riley needs sadness. She needs sadness to experience joy. I think a lot of that character's arc comes through Amy Poehler's performance, and one of the big things is the fact that nobody else could have voiced her the same way. I am absolutely convinced that there is no other actress who could have turned Joy into such a successful character, whereas I appreciate many other Pixar characters out there and the actors who voice them. I can't think of a single one who I can't swap for somebody else or who couldn't have done that great of a job. And going back to the animation, her vocal performance in that is also key, because there's another example of Pixar taking risks and trying a character that might not have worked, and then also adding new animation elements to her, which cost a lot of money. And you know, when you have a really well-written script and someone to perform it, you can take those risks and you can push the animation further, because your main character is exceptional, and it's largely because of Amy Poehler.
All right, Perry, very, very joyful about Amy Poehler. John, what is your pick?
My pick is Ellen DeGeneres, who is the voice of Dory in Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, of course. And I mean, my goodness, what Ellen does with the character of Dory, I am so convinced that Finding Nemo wouldn't be half as good if not for that vocal performance. And since I consider Finding Nemo to be if not the best Pixar movie, I'm very grateful for that vocal performance. I'm grateful for the two things that I think make up a great performance overall. I think it's the range. I think you have to have a character that can do a lot of different things. I mean, you can have a character who does, a decent job with like the role that they're given. My gosh, like Dory, first of all, is the funniest Pixar character by far. And she's in what I would say is the funniest Pixar movie. So like the fact that she can bring on a lot of the movie's best humor, but always be able to turn that on and off when the movie needs to call for dramatic action scenes, for moments between her and Marlon. It is just amazing what Ellen was able to do with this voice. I think that she did a great job just being dynamic with the character and showing real growth from beginning to end. And it's just an iconic voice. Like, you can't unhear it when you hear it. And of course, she has the most lovable lines, just keep swimming. She can speak whale. I mean, there's just so much going on there. So props to Ellen.
All right, Ed, what was your pick?
I really feel like sentimentality is gonna beat me again, because my character that I picked was Craig T. Nelson's performance as Mr. Incredible in The Incredibles. Now, it's obviously not as much of this sort of star turn as the Dory situation or Amy Poehler, but he carries that movie. And he plays multiple he plays multiple characters in that movie, in regards to when we first meet Mr. Incredible, he's a 50s sort of, hey, I'm gonna save the day type guy at the top of his game. Then we see him as an office drone who's beaten down by bureaucracy, and there's a different vocal tone to him. He doesn't play another character, but he has to have different characteristics. He has to actually act. It's not just a vocal trick or this is a cute voice that we recognize. He has to actually act these emotions of being downtrodden, then hiding all this superhero-dom from his wife, then eventually growing into a character that will have his wife and his kids be part of his life again, instead of doing clandestine stuff behind their backs. And he's got such a great arc that only comes through really through his vocal performance and through his line reading. So I feel as though his performance really helps that the most perfect of all Pixar movies, in my personal opinion, movie hum, because he is so perfect and so good.
All right, guys. Craig T. Nelson, Amy Poehler, Ellen DeGeneres, all three memorable characters. But remember, we're talking about the performance. Fight it out.
I don't want to be mean to Craig T. Robinson. I don't. But he's Nelson. Compared to Dory, he is not. It's not an indispensable. It's not an indispensable vocal performance. I can think of like dozens of other actors that could have done about the same as him. There are maybe some actors.
I don't think they could bring the dad part. I don't think they could bring the dadness in his voice
just think about
and the
how
heroicness.
many,
I feel like both those things are really hard to get in one actor.
You
can't just have Josh Brolin do it or something like that.
On the big screen right now, though, a lot of them do the hero part really well, but a lot of them have really human elements too. And I just coming up with a list in my head, I just started to look at my Marvel and DC movies and started to put actors in there. And I'm not talking about them imitating what they're doing with those characters in those movies, but I think they could achieve the same. I will say Ellen's a little tougher to argue against, because yes, it's similar to Amy Poehler in that it is an iconic performance. And I think when you think about Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, and you think about Inside Out, that is probably some of your best shots in all of Pixar movies, to think that vocal performance from that person. However, I think in this case, Finding Dory is almost the pitfall here, because even though Finding Dory is an excellent movie, a lot of the criticism I heard is that there's a little too much Ellen. There's a little too much Ellen acting as silly Dory, saying the same lines over and over again. And I think that should they come out with another one of those movies and Dory is in it front and center or a supporting character, it's going to start to grate on people.
Totally disagree, because because Dory delivers all of the humor in Finding Dory that's very effective. The thing with Amy Poehler, And I was thinking this even when I was watching Inside Out, it felt derivative of Dory. It felt like they were doing the same thing. And one of the big differences between Amy Poehler and Ellen DeGeneres, both amazing people, is that for this, you mentioned it, this was a star turn for Ellen. For Amy Poehler, not so much. The thing that I had the biggest problem with Amy Poehler's vocal performance was the same as Sadness. I could only hear Amy Poehler from Parks and Recreation. I could only hear Leslie Knope because she didn't do anything with that vocal performance.
That's one thing I want to jump on. I want to jump on, having Leslie Knope decide exactly what you're supposed to be feeling and in what order you should feel it would be hell. That would be hell. And that is what you're proposing. And that's what I feel when you hear her. But also with Ellen DeGeneres, I'm sorry, man. If I had to swim with that broad for 15 minutes, I'd punch her in the sea
You'd
face.
be able to save your son because she would keep you optimistic, and
she's calling whales.
See,
Come on.
Amy Poehler as Joy is someone who inspires you to be optimistic and really believe in it and run with it, whereas Dory almost annoys me to the point of wanting to just chill out, sit, and stop talking.
They're hitting you pretty hard on the obnoxiousness. Do you disagree with the Dory's?
I was going to say that I would say Joy is clearly the more obnoxious one, and this isn't subjective. If you take a look at the vocal performance with her, it is so samey throughout. There's one change toward the very end where she starts crying, and that's some range. But Dory, that entire movie, it is like her comedic timing, like the things that she comes in, it's so much more unexpected. With Joy, I knew what she was going to say.
Yeah, but Dory,
I think I would do the same, the exact opposite argument, where Dory does feel one note, and it's more about her adventure. And I'm just talking about finding Dory with finding her parents. It is kind of the same character going on that journey. Whereas
Dory calling Joy
exactly represents the whole arc of that movie. Even the coloring in Riley's mind, as things start to get gray and lose their color, you start to hear it in Amy Poehler's voice.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I think you're projecting, but what can I say?
Sorry, John, I haven't heard you say much about Craig T. Nelson, so I'm curious what you think about.
I started
Craig T.
off with
Nelson.
it, and I could just get into the fact that the best vocal performance in there is actually Helen, sorry, because I honestly like every scene where Craig T. Nelson or Craig T. Am I saying his name wrong?
Craig T. Nelson.
I said Robinson in the beginning. Yeah. Craig T. Nelson. Every scene where he is competing with another voice actor, I think they steal the scene from him. Edna Mode, especially. That's voiced by Brad Bird.
But again, I think you're undervaluing real team basketball in regards to this sort of acting jazz that we're doing here. There are a bunch of jerks in a room trying to approximate a family. Everybody can't do a star turn. Dory calling Joy one note is like Dory calling Marlon wet. They're both garbage and very, very one note. Whereas Craig T. Nelson, I feel as though, I feel as though this is very much like when Denzel Washington lost the Best Acting Award to Al Pacino doing a caricature of himself. Denzel Washington had to play pre-Muslim stuff Malcolm, in the streets Malcolm, street hustler guy, young Muslim guy, young disaffected Muslim guy, El Hajj Malik Shabazz, and then a dead guy. He played like 6 characters over the course of that thing. I feel as though something happened similar with Craig T. Robinson. Excuse me, you got me. Craig T. Nelson. I feel like something similar happens with Craig T. where he's the court upon which everybody plays, but there has to be a solid foundation under you for all these star turns like Edna Mode. He's just playing team ball. He's not hogging the ball, and I think
I'd say that a lot of those scenes that you're talking about, he's very gravelly, he's very dark and depressed, and there's just nothing all that special about it. We're talking about a vocal performance that is going to be a classic. It's something that has so many quotable lines.
Both of your characters are Saturday Night Live characters. They're great and very small.
Ellen wasn't at the height of her career. Like I'm
talking about Saturday Night Live characters as in thin characters who are just sort of a caricature for 3 minutes, and then you get tired of them. Because I know I was tired of Joy by the end, and I was tired of Dory the second I met her.
I was also tired by Joy the vocal performance, and I think that the fact that Craig T. Nelson feels replaceable is just kind of the killer in that
feels replaceable
argument.
until you actually put a half of the people you put on your little list, unless they're Kevin Conroy or something like that. Half the people you put on your list would fail in the family aspect or in the heroic aspect, or the dad aspect.
The family aspect makes a vocal performance better than another one.
Oh no! How you talk to your kids is different than how you talk to a villain. How you talk to your kids is different than how you talk to a villain.
So you guys have all eviscerated each other's choices pretty well. I mean, everybody's throwing haymakers. So just to wrap it up, again, I want to get each of your thoughts on your choice, and again, not the characters necessarily, but why your choice represents the best vocal performance out of all of these. John, I'll start.
Okay. I think that Ellen had the hardest job out of all three of these characters. I mean, for Leslie Knope / Amy Poehler, she sort of just had to play herself, just be optimistic and get a little sad toward the end. And I think that she doesn't. Most of that movie, I spent a lot of time wishing that we had Lewis Black, who I think had a more memorable vocal performance there. But with Dory, I mean, again, she steals every scene that she's in. I think that it wasn't given enough testament to director Andrew Stanton, who looked at Ellen and looked how this character had to not be a Tow Mater before Tow Mater even existed, and be not a side character, not even a supporting character, but in her own way, she's not just like any of that stuff. She's like the heart of this movie, and she's not even the main protagonist. And she is what makes Finding Nemo so just like people are never going to forget that movie. It's the most successful Pixar movie, and not getting into all that obviously, but yeah. So Ellen DeGeneres, she had the hardest job, and I think with director Andrew Stanton, this is a character whose vocal performance, it has perfect timing with the animation too, because all of her movement, all the scenes that she's in where she's competing with these other voice actors, Albert Brooks, I would not want that job. She is nailing it every single time. There's not a weak Dory scene in either of those two movies.
Awesome. Perry, Amy Poehler.
I mean, really, this whole argument comes down to the fact that Amy Poehler is irreplaceable as Joy, and the fact that a lot of what you say about Dory is kind of similar to what's Amy Poehler's responsibility as being Joy. And whereas Amy Poehler Ellen DeGeneres kind of teeters on the line of being annoying for some people, and she's also a side character and filled with those quick one-liners and those little gags. Amy Poehler as Joy is the entire heart of that movie. Yes, it is Riley's story, and she has one emotion in her mind, but it really is just as much Joy's story as it is Riley's. And the fact that Amy Poehler's performance, one, does the incredible and is not obnoxious when that character was pretty much written that way. It also really reflects Riley's journey throughout the entire time, because Joy does change. She has one emotion. She has to be that one emotion, but she also has to change and come to terms with where she stands amongst the other emotions and what is best for Riley. And I think you can hear that in her work and the way she works with everybody else. I mean, the whole ensemble thing was brought up. And with Amy Poehler being Joy amidst those other emotions, I don't think there's any more of an important place for someone to be able to play off other people really well, where they can still have their moments to shine, but she also is the heart of the movie, because that's really what emotions are about. They're about working together, and if Inside Out taught me anything, it's that.
All right, and Ed, Craig T. Nelson.
Much like fathers all over the place, you guys do not appreciate what Mr. Incredible is doing in that movie. He is your way into an entire new superhero universe. Do you know why nobody does superhero stuff unless it's Marvel or DC? Because trying to create your own superhero universe is super hard, and nobody relates to it, and they always compare you unfavorably to other types of comic book stuff. Whereas everybody in the world knows the best Fantastic Four movie that was ever made is The Incredibles. They literally took the entire format and did it way better. And as a character, I would love a Mr. Incredible more than The Thing. Sidetrack. All I'm saying is, the bottom line is, he's doing a lot of heavy lifting, literally and figuratively, in that movie. He's providing a court for everybody to play, and his change as a character is palpable. Whereas I do not believe Dory's is, nor do I believe really Joy's is. Joy has a temporary moment of, oh man. And then she goes back to being what she is. He goes from a person who is beaten down and broken to somebody who's saving the world with his family, and to someone who's willing to open himself up to having everybody come join him in that joy rather than hiding it from them. And all of these things are he's doing it just with his voice. And there are times where he's not just gravelly or family. There's a million times when he's discovering all the dead bodies in the cave that Syndrome killed. And there's a lot to his performance that is underappreciated, much like dads in this country. Boom.
All right. That passionate defense of Craig T. Nelson and many other things. I love it, Ed.
American family.
Juan, anything to clean up there?
We already sort of picked up on Craig T. Nelson versus Craig Robinson. A lot of gifs in my feed of happy dancing Craig Robinson waiting for his Pixar checks. Jack D. Manheim on Twitter wants to know about your Top Gun shirt.
Yes, so this is Top Gun and Interstellar.
He wants the reference explained, yeah.
Yeah, so Lazarus is the mission that they go on to save Matt Damon and the other people too. This is the black hole. This is the ship that Matt Damon blows up. Spoilers.
Right.
Yeah, I know Interstellar isn't the favorite of people in the studio.
Well, there
I
you go.
brought it hoping to piss off Spencer, but I don't see him. So
You're welcome,
Oh, I'll get
Twitter.
'em.
And then a ton of alternate suggestions for performances. Richard Kind as Bing Bong came up number one. Patton Oswalt as Remy. Billy Crystal as Mike Wazowski. Both Tom Hanks and Tim Allen back and forth. And Samuel L. Jackson as Frozone came up several times.
Oh wow, yeah, very memorable performances.
I felt like that'd be on the nose. So.
Yeah, this is always going to be a tough category. First of all, John, can I please your Pixar theory? When you're done with the second, can you please write a story on Pixar called "How Not to Be a Tomater"? Because that's
The Ellen biography.
the Ellen biography, "How Not to Be a
Oh,
Tomater." That I think that's the Pixar book that people would like to read. You all very passionate about your selections, so it kind of comes down to what people said against yours, and then kind of your passion in defending what you wanted. And I think that it's very close, but to me, I think it actually came down. Ed, I know you're concerned about getting out sentimental, but I actually think that your argument for Craig T. Nelson, again, about his performance, the fact that he provides a playground for everyone to play in, that he plays all these different levels of the character, it was similar to your argument about Joy Perry, but I think that Ed actually sold me a little bit better on Craig T. Nelson and why it was the best performance. And so it was very close, but out of those three, Ed, I think I'm going to give you the point there, actually, for Craig T. Nelson.
Yay! I'm actually very happy.
What was the fan poll on?
They take some issue with you. 42% of them went for Dory, Ellen DeGeneres as Dory. 30% went for Amy Poehler as Joy. 28% went Craig T. Nelson as Bob Parr / Mr. Incredible.
I mean, it's a
They're not in this room.
It was
They are.
a very close fight, a very tough fight. You all picked great choices. That's why we brought you on here. This is, your Pixar. So let's move on to round 3. This is from Twitter user at Arvito. I don't know. Why does everyone have such hard Twitter names? This question, which Pixar character should be the next to get their own spin-off film? We were just talking about Finding Dory. Of course, Dory's own spin-off movie, and any number of characters that could get their own movie. But which character do you think is worthy of their own spin-off? And John, we're going to start with you this round.
Okay, So I wrote out like a whole pitch for this spin-off movie. I don't want to do a super long thing here, so I'm gonna try to rein it in, but just give me that look.
Fair enough.
To me, I understood the question as like which Pixar character should get a spin-off film.
Right.
And to me, I believe that Brave needs to be redeemed. That's a movie that through circumstances outside of Brenda Chapman's control fell short. And I think that there are so many things that they had right in the beginning of that movie that if they had another chance, if they focused on a different character and sort of had a fresh take, we could finally get that fantasy Pixar movie we've always wanted.
Yes.
So that's why I believe that character should be the witch from Brave. Some of you know, like, the witch from Brave is one of my favorite Pixar characters. And I think this is a character who deserves to be explored in prequel territory. I looked at really good prequels like Rise of the Planet of the Apes that take these characters that weren't like a sidekick or they weren't, the main character. They were a character that, shows up and is very compelling and sort of has that suggestion. Mm-hmm. We would explore a prequel with a younger version of the witch from Brave a long time before she would ever meet Mor'du and change his fate and stop the kingdom from being taken over. We would have a young version of this witch. At that point, she would be an apprentice woodcarver. When one day, she likes to carve dragons, not bears. And one day, a sorceress shows up, finds that she has all this inclination to use magic. So she takes her on as her apprentice witch. She starts to explore magic. She learns how to, when she snaps, inanimate objects come to life. It's amazing. But her problem is that she feels like she deserves, to have raw power. She wants to accomplish what her goals and what she wants with brute force and brute strength. So she sneaks into the room where she can get to that black cauldron that we see in Brave. She wants to craft a spell that will change her fate. But when the sorceress tries to stop her, she gets that spell instead and turns into none other than a Scottish dragon, finally. So we have this dragon who's been turned into nothing but pure aggression and pure will, rampaging the countryside. The young witch goes on an adventure to go stop that dragon. She has to deal with the son of the king, this prince who tries to stop the dragon with brute force. She runs into these rebel thieves who have a talking crow, and she impresses them with her magic. And you have this misfits adventure where you understand a lot of things, like why does she love bears? And what's the deal with the will-o'-the-wisps and their connection with that? Yeah. It all has to do, though, with that central narrative of the lesson that she learns about both peace and strength.
All right.
And I would call it The Woodcarver.
The Woodcarver. So your spin-off movie is called The Woodcarver. All right, Ed, you're up next.
Oh, jeez. Okay. I don't know if my pitch will be that long because I feel like I'm going to save some of my points for the rebuttal round.
Fair enough.
Okay, but here's the thing. My character was Jack from The Incredibles, who is just a great character, period, and everybody knows that. He's a great character, and I would love to explore his tween or teen years. And depending, that's what I'm gonna keep it vague, baby. This is what you do when you really pitch. Let the producers have some little input so they can feel like they did something.
So this was John's is a prequel and yours would be a sequel.
Mine is a sequel, and it takes place, I would think, like I said, in the tweens or the teens, whatever you're trying to market to that day.
Sure.
Whoever I'm pitching it to, tweens or teens, and basically what's happened is there's been a new superhero renaissance since the events of The Incredibles. Now, not only is it The Incredibles who are back, but some of the other tertiary superheroes are back, and they're having the big superhero party and doing superhero stuff again, and it's a grand new age of superheroes. But a dark threat, maybe somebody related to Syndrome, or maybe Syndrome knocked up some cocktail waitress in the Bahamas or something, and he's got some biracial monster kid down somewhere with dreads, and he's mad about his dad being dead, and he captures all the superheroes, much like Syndrome tried to do, eliminating all the superheroes. He captures all the superheroes, including, of course, Jack's family. Now, Jack is not some super duper superhero. It's shown in the earlier parts that part of how much he uses his powers, he doesn't really know how to use his powers. It's just sort of emotional. And as you grow up and you get told, well, you can do this, but you can't do that, all those mental blocks, much like Franklin Richards, they block him from true access to all his powers. So he's just sort of a disaffected emo kid, who's just like, man, my parents are supers, but screw that, that's lame. He doesn't have ready access to his powers, so he disdains it. And anyway, yada yada yada.
We get Jack unleashed.
Yeah, he ends up unleashing his full potential because he has to rescue his family, and he has to get together a young bratty team of almost ready superheroes, including Frozone's super hot daughter, who is a flame person, obviously. She's a flame chick, and throughout at the end of the movie, he'll be the only person able to assume a final form that would be able to kiss her and hold her and caress her through all their romantic stuff that they've built up over the movie. So that's my perfect ending. The flame girl and Jack embracing his super flame powers after they save the day, baby.
Wow, there you go. That's the Jack sequel. Jack the teen years, the tween years.
Jack Wick.
Jack Wick. There you go. Perry.
All right.
Who did you choose?
Those were long stories. I'm going to do an elevator pitch for the Tank Gang from Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, because in Finding Nemo, they really held up the second half of that movie quite a bit. I feel like when you deviate from the main character and you go to that second storyline, there's a very good chance that it could fall apart then. I mean, we even brought it up with some other movies where it falls apart at the end. Part of the reason why Finding Nemo is such a strong movie throughout is because the Tank Gang is so lovable, and how they take care of Nemo is just so delightful, and you want to spend more time with them. You want to know what their early days were like, but I'm not going there. I am going forward as a movie that takes place after Finding Dory, because if you sat through the credits of Finding Dory, you know that the Tank Gang pop up out of the ocean, still in their little bags, right outside the Institute, and they're plucked up by volunteers, and they're obviously being brought in there. So you have a whole batch of lovable characters that we still should know more about. You get to know them a little bit in Finding Nemo. Now it's their time to shine with Gil at the forefront. And one thing that Finding Nemo and Finding Dory do that I'd like to see them try a little differently in a Tank Gang movie would be to approach humans differently. And I think they do it really well in Ratatouille and in very few other movies where clearly Linguini and Remy have a special relationship. I would like to see a fish like Gil, who is so tough and hardened in that movie and clearly has a big problem with Darlin the dentist. What would happen if he went in there and sees that a human being is actually trying to take care of him, make him better, rehabilitate him, and send him back into the ocean? So I'm going with a Tank Gang movie.
So Tank Gang sequel in the aquarium. We have the Brave prequel about the witch, the woodcarver, and we have Jack, the tween years. Guys, what do you think?
Well, the problem with Brave is, first off, I'll be honest. I appreciate how well thought out both pitches were, but if I'm honest, my eyes glazed over a little bit. Partially with Brave because, and I'm not hard on Brave. I think Brave deserves a little more credit than it got.
Exactly.
But we are talking about what character should get a spinoff, and that's not just about story potential. It's also about what the audience wants, and it's also about what is good for business for Pixar. That would probably be one of the worst decisions. And then with The Incredibles, the problem is that we're getting The Incredibles 2 in 2018. So it's really impossible to vouch for a Jack movie until we know what's going to happen.
Which to me feels like a Violet movie in a way, because you were kind of pitching it as how I would imagine like Violet being like the goth, bratty person. I would say like it's weird too because the Jack character, taking him out of that ensemble. Look, we already got Jack Attack, the short film, and that was great on its own. The beauty of the Jack power set.
If we're being rude, you pitched a worse version of Maleficent, which didn't do that great, with the most beautiful woman in the world
better Disney
in
live-action
it.
remix.
That's number one. You pitched a worse version, and it's also somehow managed to be a worse version of How to Train Your Dragon. I'm just like, wow, you're a genius
like How to Train Your Dragon. She's not
jamming two horrible fantasy genres together, using their worst parts together. You're a genius at that. Also, this right here, wow. I'm really sorry. I don't understand that. I can pitch better versions of each of your movies. That's what I don't understand.
Losing his powers, not having like an infinite number of powers.
I already have that in there, baby.
How about we just let Pixar do it? It's coming out in a year anyway.
We have no assurance that they're going to go tween or anything. But by the way, you're coming about.
He should get a spin-off.
We have no assurance that they're going to do that. He might just be a dumb baby again who has certain little cutesy things that he does. But also, in your point about Violet should be the emo one, dude. She will have grown out of that by now.
Exactly.
She says they ego forever. But him trotting similar territory makes sense because half the kids are athletes and half the kids are emo.
You know what the big difference?
Can I attack her for a second? Hold on.
Yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on the Tank Gang?
The Tank Gang thing, I just don't understand what the actual arc for Gil is. I do get that Gil's a great character. I understand, and I understand that you focusing on him is smart. I'll give you points on that. However, what are they doing? I mean, I would pitch like them as a true Ocean's 11, stealing some stuff. They've shown the ability to form plans.
We know what happens when Pixar tries to put other genres in their movies, and that's when we get things like Cars 2, which was a spy movie. So I'm going to take that out of the equation
Cars
entirely.
3 is a Rocky movie, so what's the difference?
You both are
doing
pitching movies that we've already gotten. Like you're pitching a movie about a group of characters in a location we've already been to, very similar to a story that we've already gotten, with characters by all accounts and purposes, their story is over. There's nothing left to say about the Tank Gang. Whereas Brave, like you said, deserves another chance. That's why it should be done again, so they can actually get it done right this time.
Okay, so if they do that, then no one will see it. But the Tank Gang story is not over whatsoever because they were a small and important part in Finding Nemo, and clearly they touch on it a little. They had all been through stuff that landed them in that dentist tank. Then they've been through a lot that land them in the Institute, and the Institute is such a rich place that even though I think they used it very well in Finding Dory, there are so many exhibits we didn't see.
I would argue that both of your characters got as much screen time as anyone could stand. Whereas Jack had his own spin-off already, as you said. Thank you for giving me that point, because I love that movie. But it's just imagine how that would be if he was actually cognizant and cogent and was a real human with real goals and stuff.
But you know what the problem with Jack
How much better that would be.
So guys, let's bottom line it here. I am the head of Pixar. I wish I would be going home to a very large house tonight. But I'm the head of Pixar. You three we're doing a Shark Tank type thing. I'm going to greenlight one of your movies. You've got about 30 seconds. You have to sell me on why I'm greenlighting your movie over these other two. Perry, I'll start with you.
All right, so you're greenlighting my movie. One, because the story potential is there. As I said, we did not get much of the Tank Gang in Finding Nemo. They are introduced at the end of Finding Dory, so your company is already paving the way for a Tank Gang movie. And there's so much more to explore. That is, Gil would be the forefront, but there's so much more that you can explore with all of those characters that are very rich and colorful characters. And on top of that, you're running a company. You're going to want to greenlight this movie because Finding Nemo and Finding Dory are proven successes. People want more of them. You definitely didn't put that little post-credit thing in there for no reason at all. You did it because you know that they have potential.
All right, John, why am I greenlighting The Woodcarver?
Pixar's track record has shown us that when they try to do other movies in worlds we've already been to with different characters, it almost never works, and it's never better than the movie we already got. Which is why it's so unique that we have this Brave movie that has a premise, it has a location that we all want to see. We all were excited about Brave leading up to that movie. The problem is they made it like Brother Bear. They had production problems, but here you have Brenda Chapman directing. This time she has full creative control. Meg LaFave writing. She, of course, wrote Inside Out. You have these two people who are going to come, they're going to have a fresh start. They're going to take an inkling of a character, flesh it out, and finally commit to a medieval fantasy movie that's about something new and original. It's going to be fully embracing the Scottish folklore. It's going to be having the knights. It's going to be having the castle of Dunbroch before things get more dark and drabby in the more current version of Brave. And the best part is it's going to redeem Brave. That's why it should get a spin-off. It's not for cash, not because you know who the characters are, because you're going to see that trailer, you're going to forget about the witch, and you're going to be like, I want to see the woodcarver, because that actually looks like a good Pixar movie.
All right, Ed, sell me on Jack Jack. Why does it get the green light over these two?
Okay, I'm looking at this camera. Okay, look, man. I read Brad Bird's script for Toy Story 2, and I know that it ends with Jack Jack as a tween or something. So the bottom line is, I feel as though this could be a capable spin-off of The Incredibles. It's not Incredibles 2 because it's more of a graduation of the concept. Much like the previous movie was like 50s through 80s superheroes, this will be 90s through now superheroes with all their edginess, all their social malaise, all of their apathy. It's more like a version of like if you let somebody like Legion or the new ways we've conceived of superheroes be, we'll show superheroes through a lens, a modern lens, through a new generation of superheroes. And it's the only movie where you actually have a child be the hero rather than somebody tertiary to parents. This is your movie to connect with all the kids. These guys will want to be Jack Jack.
All right. Ooh, I have a big decision to make. Lon, anything to clean up?
Not much to clean up. A lot of people really celebrating that it's getting intense. It's getting a little brutal. It's getting a little tough. Ed's "Can I attack her for a second?" quote was popular. And a lot of arguments as well that a lot of people saying Brave, they want to see a sequel before they get a spin-off. They want to see more of that main story, get a chance to explore more of Merida.
Nobody pitched that here. So.
Nobody pitched that. In terms of other characters, Frozone and Edna Mode, again, coming up a ton. Wow. People love those characters. I also thought Jerry from Jerry's Game, the old man playing chess, he came up a few times. People want to see what he's been up to.
Very
in the years
interesting.
since then.
Richard, I'm curious, just from the couch perspective, you listen to these pitches. Which one of these three would you go see?
Well, I'd probably go see all of them. I think that John gave the best main pitch, but I think that Perry had the strongest closing.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with that.
I don't know. I think, well, if we're going to see a witch spinoff, I actually kind of would want to see, like, the thing that you pitched in, like, the Pixar theory or whatever, with, like, Boo using the time travel doors and all that kind of stuff. I want to see, like, the connection of the Pixar theory and have them prove it or whatever. I don't know how much I care about, like, the dragons and stuff.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, but, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to pick one.
Well, Ed, Richard, I'm kind of with you, which is that, Ed, I'm sort of between Perry and John here. I think they hit you pretty hard on Incredibles 2, on the fact that they kind of hit those beats in previous movies, and again, they were just both very passionate about their choices. So it came down to me between Perry and John, and I mean, like any Hollywood studio executive, I have to choose between money and art, which is pretty much the two conversations that we're having here. Perry, you make a very compelling point that Finding Dory has the proven potential of, we've just seen these two movies be massively successful, and this is probably a sure bet. But John, you know, your passion about the woodcarver is offset by the fact that that Brave is not a very popular Pixar movie. I have to choose between those two, and I think what's putting me over the edge is the idea of the argument that we kind of already got the Tank Gang movie in Finding Dory as far as characters in an aquarium, and that this would be a different movie. So I'm going to go John and the Woodcarver on this one, but it's very close. So John gets the point there.
I was all for Timmy Gang.
I was just being
very
mean for the
close.
show. I love it.
I was very close. Lon, what's I'm sure there's a lot of people yelling at me right now on the internet.
This is your second straight round really bucking the trend. 50% wanted Jack the movie. 35% were all about the Tank Gang. 15% went with the Witch from Brave.
Well, I don't know if those 85% were sitting in this room listening to these pitches. I have to go with what I'm pitched in the room, you know? All right, I'm going to hear about that one. That doesn't matter. That's why judging is the least fun job.
On the hashtag, among people watching, there was a lot of enthusiasm for the Woodcarver. I want to go see the Woodcarver was tweeted more than once.
We probably have to change the title.
All right. Title TBD. Let's go to round 4. This is the one that I've been looking forward to, just because, we did an honest trailer for Cars and Cars 2 here a couple weeks ago, and we went into a bit of a wormhole about the Cars universe because Spencer and Joe and I and Andy, we just don't get it. There's so many questions that we don't understand about the Cars universe, and this doesn't have to be an incredibly long round, but we thought this would be just a fun, creative exercise. So, question 4, round 4, explain to me the existence of the world of Cars. And whomever I believe will most satisfactorily answers my question, because I'm very disturbed and confused by this world. And so I would like to hear you explain it, and then I may have follow-up questions. I may not. It depends on your explanations. But the winner will be who gives me the most satisfying explanation of the world of Cars, how they came to be, why they are the way they are, and all of those wonderful existential questions that Cars poses. And Ed, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Personally, I feel as though you have to think so far out of the box to make Cars make any kind of sense. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, this is my pitch.
All right.
And also this is Universal and Pixar joining up for a movie, so they can both co-finance and make it big in China, because people in America will not see this movie. I'm going to make that caveat right now. Okay. What I think happens is I think Transformers or GoBots, whichever one you hate more, were roaming the Earth, and they were having a big war with humans. And we got down real Terminator 4 level of just oh man, we're barely making it. A small group of rebel survivors are holding on. And their last hope is to engage an EMP that will kill these marauding robots that have been murdering them for roughly a century. And one Kyle Reese type guy gets to the EMP and he hits it, and it shuts down all the machines. But they reboot, and they don't remember that they're evil robots who are bent on killing people. They think, I'm a car. I guess I'm a fucking car. And they just drive around as cars with their dumb eyes. And you see how they use those latent vestigial transformative abilities to move their tires to grab stuff. And that's the reason why they have that sort of mobility. So that's what
happened to the human beings?
Oh, well, the humans are all dead. That last Kyle Reese guy was probably the last person, and he died. And basically also they rebuilt society, how their memories that were implanted in them, and just like Transformers come to Earth and they use radio signals to form their personalities, they had already done that. So that's why we get Mater. Somebody was listening to too many Cable Guy records. That's where Mater comes from.
So the last humans, their dying act of humanity was to disable all technology. They rebooted as sentient cars, and that's our universe. Okay, interesting. All right, Perry, please explain Cars to me.
All right, so you know how cars are getting smarter and smarter? We have cars that drive themselves. So eventually, cars become self-aware, and they start to realize that we're carrying these people around. Why do we need them? They're slowing us down. So they get rid of all the people, and the cars take over, and they assume the personality of the last person who drove them. And if that sounds familiar, it's because they're doing a lot of press for Cars 3 right now, and that's the explanation that the Cars creative director, Jay Ward, gave. So I find it pretty satisfying. I think it's probably the most satisfying type of answer you can get from a narrative perspective, but also, I'm logical and I don't like going crazy with rumors and all that stuff. So when I hear that the guy who is responsible, he's apparently responsible for the big manual on cars that exist at Pixar. When I hear an answer like that from a guy like him, now I got the 1-2 punch, and I'm digging this answer.
Okay, so again, the same follow-up question, and maybe this was in between the lines and you just wanted, for the sake of my weak stomach. What happened to the human beings?
Cars got rid of them.
Cars, so self-driving cars
do
gained
with that
sentience
as you please.
and got rid of the human beings. Okay, I'm going to have the same follow-up question to all of you after your pitch, and then I may just make my decision. Just be aware. John, what is with cars? Explain it to me.
Well, for me, trying to understand cars with any external information or trying to like bring something really like out of nowhere into it just makes me more confused, and it usually raises more questions. So my explanation ties into something I literally wrote a book on, which I literally wrote an entire chapter about what the cars actually are and why. I actually did because Jay Ward mentioned that the cars take on the personalities of the humans that owned them. Well, part of that, though, is that it's not an apocalypse where people died or the cars got rid of them. When the first cars came out, self-driving cars weren't really a thing yet. And sorry, I should argue my own thing here.
Yeah.
The cars come to life the same way that the toys come to life from Toy Story when humans aren't around. So somebody who's asking these questions about Cars movies, they've probably seen plenty of Pixar movies. I'm sure that they've seen Toy Story. So they can buy into that same conceptual thing where machines that are loved by humans, they actually can be autonomous and do things on their own. So what happened to the humans? Another Pixar movie explains that the humans were evacuated because they polluted the Earth. And the cars decided, you know what? The humans can't handle Earth. We're going to stay here. And they decide to act like humans and create their own human society. It's the only explanation for a lot of plot holes that happen in this universe. It's a shared delusion where they have these false memories where they think that they were the humans after a while because they have all these flashbacks to Radiator Springs. That boggles the mind. How is Radiator Springs how was there a 1954 in this universe? Those are cars. It's because those are actually humans going through human things, but it's filtered through the perspective of sentient cars that exist because human emotion is what brings them to life.
Okay, so, and again, I'm going to have my follow-up question for all of you after this, but just to summarize, Ed, you're telling me that cars were Transformers/GoBots, there was an EMP, humans went extinct, and they are now the only surviving species on Earth. Perry, you're telling me that these are sentient cars who basically staged a coup, exterminated the human beings, and now rule the Earth. John, you're telling me that cars come to life like the toys in Toy Story when they aren't around, and they are remnants of the human civilization that left into the Wall-E spaceships. I have one follow-up question for all of you, and this is very important. Why do they have tongues? And I'm going to start with you.
Oh my God.
In the horrible Michael Bay films about Transformers, they've shown an ability to transform into actual people. So it's a remnant of that program.
Okay, human transformation. All right, thank you. Perry, why do cars have tongues?
Those cars are super smart, and they needed tongues so that they could speak to each other and say terrible lines like every single thing that comes out of Tow Mater's mouth. So it is materialized over time because they needed it.
Okay, and John, why do the cars have tongues?
Same reason they have teeth and eyes. It's because they want to be expressive. They love humans, what humans left behind. So by filtering all of this and pretending that everything around them looks a little bit more human, that's how they rationalize things.
All right, it's a short round, guys. This was a very simple concept, and I think all of you really, really brought some great theories. Lon, please, is there anything to clean up there factually?
Oh, so many facts to check here about the tongues. A lot of interesting theories from viewers. A common one was Andy from the Toy Story movies now is playing with cars, and we're seeing what's in his head. Skynet came up a few times. Bath salts a la Sausage Party. Cars is not set on Earth. That was a theory that came up a few times. It's just a Earth-like planet where there are cars. And then perhaps my favorite, at Kim Hanley, it's a goddamn kids movie. Let it go, people. That is
Kim obviously doesn't know what we do here at Screen Junkies.
That's satisfying.
I have to tell you, I was between everyone's theories appealed to me a little bit. I have to say that it came down largely to the last question. Perry, you almost won me over with the fact that cars evolved tongues in order to communicate with each other. That is a very good answer, but John's idea of cars developing eyes, you didn't just explain tongues to me, you explained eyes and teeth. You explained much more to me than I asked for, and it actually kind of made sense. So, John, not surprisingly, I'm going to have to give you the point on that one. Thank you for kind of explaining cars to me. So that brings us up to John with 3. Ed, you have a point. Perry, you're not out of it. If you win this round, then you and Ed will have a tiebreaker to go to the speed round. So everybody's got something to play for here in round 5. And of course, it's not an easy question here in round 5. Caleb Boatman at BCUS_ I'm Batman. If you are Batman, that's very, very not a very good way to hide your identity. Asked, who is the best Pixar villain? This is maybe not as many big choices to choose from. We'll see. Perry, since your back is against the wall here, I'll start with you.
Okay.
Who did you pick as the best Pixar villain?
I'm going with the OG Pixar villain, and that would be Sid from Toy Story. I was rewatching Toy Story the other day in preparation for this, and it really made me appreciate the simplicity of a villain who is just evil. He is rotten to his core. We are just inundated at this point with things like superhero movies and really any kind of genre of movie where they are constantly explaining away a villain's background, and Sid just beautifully shows just how vicious he can be, and the fact that he doesn't get some whole sob story. We are just watching a kid who is super sadistic and he likes to torture toys and kill them, make them explode, and because it's not really explained away, he tends to be scarier. He is scary while you're watching him in the movie, and he's scarier when you leave the theater. You remember his face, you remember those braces, that shirt. It's this thing that's just ingrained in your head, and it's absolutely mortifying behavior, and it's also kind of mortifying because you sit there and you wonder, where are his parents? And not in a kind of situation, because I'm someone who likes to pick, rules apart. Not because, it's a kid and his parents should be on top of him, but like, oh my God, he is awful. He's going to grow out of doing terrible things to toys, and this world is just going to go to shit. Someone needs to keep this kid in check. I'm going with Sid.
All right, John, who did you pick?
It was probably the easiest question that we had that we were discussing here, because to me, there's one Pixar villain who stands out above all of them, and that is Syndrome from The Incredibles. Syndrome from The Incredibles is... Okay, my favorite thing about Syndrome, just to get off on the outset, is that he is a guy who, for superheroes, actually is self-aware of the fact that he's in a superhero movie, and none of the other characters are. That line where he's like, "You got me monologuing." Jason Lee bringing that to the character, and that whole thing where he gets so wrapped up just for a second in the fact that he's in front of his idol. That is just an example of all of the ridiculous nuance that's in that character. It works so well. He was named Buddy Pine, but he has hero syndrome, hence the clever name. And what I love about that is that his motivations, his reason for becoming a super villain are so grounded in something that's like, he just wanted to be respected. He wanted to be accepted, and he didn't get that. For me, I totally understand what it's like to have like a fanboy sort of like get really frustrated with you. Yeah. And I'm like, you could be Syndrome one day. But no, what they do is that of actually making him a threat, as he himself points out. There's so many little touches, beautiful touches they do with this character. The fact that he saves his inventions for himself. The fact that his master plan isn't really what you would expect. His whole deal is that he wants to give weapons to everybody in the world. He is such a true villain because he doesn't just want to crush the Incredibles. He wants to make it so that nobody could be a Mr. Incredible ever again. And he does that by making everybody super. And like, that's the core philosophy of the movie, and it's controversial. The idea that like letting the exceptional people be exceptional is not something like I think I could have like hour-long debates about with people. And the fact that you have a villain and you're brave enough, you're Brad Bird and you're directing and writing and you're brave enough to introduce a villain like that in a kid's superhero movie, they nailed it. There's no other Pixar villain that's as villainous and as awesome as Syndrome at the same time.
All right, Ed, who did you pick?
I picked Lotso Huggin' Bear from Toy Story 3, and I'll be brief in my opening arguments. The thing I find so intriguing about Lotso is that his hate does come from a place, and I do understand what Perry's talking about the over analysis of villains, origins and whatnot. But in his case, it's particularly affecting because he made a choice to hate himself and hate others like him because of how he was treated. Now, I don't want to get off on a rant here, but there's a bunch of groups of people in this world who experience that. Because of how you're treated, you hate yourself, and you hate other people like you, and you just nihilism, and you throw people, you don't really care. So I think that is a thing that would make a villain in real life. It makes many villains in real life, and I think it's one of Pixar's really most realistic for a strawberry scented bear. A strawberry scented bear is the most realistic character that I've seen in a Pixar movie so far, and I just felt like I'll leave it at that.
All right, 3 very strong villains that left an impression. What do you guys think?
I want to point out something about Sid, that when the creators of John Lasseter and Pete Docter and them, when they were coming up with the idea of Sid, they didn't even want to create a villain. They didn't want to have a character in the movie that was a real antagonist. So that's why he comes off not really as evil like you were saying, but he really just comes off as like a kid who's sort of in their way. So to me, I was like, you can't really say that makes him the best villain when you have Syndrome, who is all the time he's after our main characters and finding ways to make their lives terrible in unique ways.
Syndrome's elaborate plan is where his weakness comes in. I mean, he essentially is self-sabotaging. He loses in the end because of flaws in his own design.
He gets a great comeuppance.
It is that very, very lengthy backstory and his plan, and I think it starts to cross over a little bit. And really, it's the same thing with Lotso too. That's probably one of my least favorite scenes in Toy Story 3, even though I love the movie, is right when they're about to fall in the dumpster, and it's like in a split second, all someone had to do was say his owner's name, and that's it. He loses everything he just established. And the thing with Sid, I mean, you brought up realism before. That is why I find Sid to be the best, the most memorable, and the most horrifying, is because when I look at Sid, I definitely see a kid, if not an adult, that can exist somewhere nowadays. Because think about, and this actually plays really well with who Andy is. And I think Andy is part of the reason, Sid is part of the reason that Andy winds up becoming a strong character in Toy Story, because you're looking at these two different kids and how they play with their toys, and one winds up enhancing the other.
Well, but I also think that in that way, what you just said, Sid is also a cipher. He's meant to just be a mirror character for Andy, to trump up Andy, because we don't even really, because I mean, I love that movie, but we don't even really get to meet Andy. Andy's a set of feet and hands. Andy doesn't, to make a weird mirror cipher for a character we don't actually really get to meet.
Characters in movies where there's multiple characters are meant to enhance each other.
I would say that's what he's saying. He's too exaggerated for the role he's supposed to have, because they want to make you hate him. It doesn't feel like he has a real justification, and also nothing he does is all that evil. He just sort of plays with his toys wrong.
Well,
I mean, they don't actually are alive.
If you look at the Toy Story characters as toys with any sense of humanity at all, which is what we all do considering they're so successful. Yeah, I look at those toys that he tortured and manipulated and stitched together and made absolutely miserable and terrified, and I think, oh my God, I understand why he has a great effect on all of them.
Well, but has it been established that he knows for sure that they're alive? Like he can hear their screams and stuff? Because I did some research, and it seemed like people were suggesting that, and I'm just like, I find it more interesting that it's just from his perspective, they're not real.
That's not the point of Pixar, though.
But Lotso knows that those dudes are real, and if he lets them fall into a lava pit, that they're gonna die.
And also, Lotso is just a retread of Stinky Pete with like an extra backstory, and that's kind of where the movie falls apart. When I was watching Toy Story 3, I was so ready to get over with the Lotso stuff so that we could get to the really good parts of Toy Story 3, the ending, especially because his ending isn't even very satisfying. He's in the front of a truck. Awesome. It has nothing to do with him as a character.
He has the ultimate comeuppance for someone like him, because as stated in the movies, he feels as though all toys should be destroyed. All toys in the end are too trashy. They gotta go get destroyed. They gotta be not anything anymore because of his intense self-hatred. So he gets his great comeuppance by being strapped to a truck, never dying, always inundated with flies forever and ever and ever until that truck becomes a damn car in the car universe. And then he's driving around with it on the front.
The problem is, though, is that like when you're watching that, I mean, this isn't really anything we haven't seen in a lot of other movies and TV. The original villain here is Syndrome, because his master plan, as said, is like,
I never saw that before.
He's not
A dude jealous of superheroes and wants to be one villain and
about
screws
it.
him over. I see every
getting
comic
caught
book
up
you
in the
read is
lore of
that.
it.
That happens,
Every comic
yeah.
book you read is that. Lex Luthor's almost that sort of, oh, you're super, I'm jealous. That was what's interesting. Again, it's a great superhero allegory because they use a lot of superhero archetypes.
Which makes it
but
great.
Lotso, I've never seen someone whose self-hatred
governor
is
from
their
Walking
doom.
Dead.
Okay.
Well, Sid is pure, so he's the best.
No, because
Sid is simple
Sid is
because he's the
Well,
worst.
that's
Sid
why
is
he's
simple, which makes him the worst.
Just give me a quick 15-second closing on each of yours.
All
Why
right.
is yours the best one?
Sis-
Better over these two.
Okay. Sid's not really evil. He's just a kid. He doesn't do anything very villainous when you actually look at it. And Lotso Huggenbear, we've seen it so many other times. And honestly, he's just not a great character to have around. But Syndrome enjoys every scene that he's in. When he steals scenes from Mr. Incredible, as I was arguing earlier, and his whole comeuppance with the capes, it has such a great comedic beat, and he's there to underestimate Jack, and we get to see Jack's power for the first time. He's in a better movie than these two movies, and it shows because he's a better villain, and he's a big reason why The Incredibles is arguably one of the best Pixar movies. It has the best Pixar villain.
All right. Ed.
I would definitely concede that that Syndrome is a great villain, but we're talking about the best of Pixar villains, and their genre of villain is normally pretty innocuous, pretty unthreatening, who gets some sort of mild comeuppance in the end. Syndrome dies, which is bad. Sid becomes a garbage man, which is almost worse. But Lotso becomes a hood ornament for eternity when all he wants to do is die. So he gets the biggest comeuppance because he represented the biggest threat to the Pixar characters that we care about the most. I love The Incredibles, but we don't care about them the way we care about the Toy Story characters. He was menacing our favorite Pixar characters, and he got the biggest comeuppance. And he had a lot of psychological motivation. He's the best.
And Perry. Sid.
All right, so both good villains, but I think in our rebuttals we've kind of we've enlightened everybody on the flaws, and that's the problem with crazy backstories, is you wind up finding the weaknesses in those characters and them tripping over their own storyline. Whereas with Sid, I mean, I used the word pure before because that is something that matters. Sometimes the simplicity of someone's terrifying behavior is what sticks with you, and it's what radiates out to all the other characters, which is the point of a movie with multiple characters, to enhance other characters, to make you fear for other characters' lives. With those two, they aren't as scary. They don't stick with you quite like Sid's creepy face. And I'm a big fan of horror movies, and a big thing with horror movies is that the second you start explaining away a villain's motivation, they become less scary. Sid is not only scary because of the situation he's in and he's created, but he's also scary because he's haunting and he sticks with you.
All right. Great arguments. Lon, anything to clean up?
Lots of people arguing we should have allowed for abstract concepts as villains, so like puberty/adulthood, the ocean from Nemo and Dory, and death, the concept of death.
I mean, I would have entertained the concept.
Nobody
No one brought
pitched
it up.
them, yeah. Also, Kevin Spacey as Hopper came up a lot.
Second choice.
Randall from Monsters, Inc., whoever abandoned Jessie the Cowgirl. Mater was mentioned. And also a lot of debate on the Twitter about whether we should really consider Sid a villain, because does he know that he's doing something evil to these toys? That was a frequently debated topic. Still going on.
Yeah. Part of your theory, right, is that Andy's mom was Jesse's owner. Is that correct?
It's a different thing.
Oh, it's a different thing.
Yeah,
it's a whole different
it's a whole,
It's a
yeah.
whole other thing.
Come on, Dan. That's a
I'm
totally
sorry. I
different
get my
theory.
Pixar theories all mixed up.
I don't blame you.
It's a whole, yeah, but it's a lot to keep. I have a board in my office. I'll show it to you. It's got lines of yarn and string. It's a whole thing.
That one too.
Oh man, you guys really did a great job selling me on all of your villains, and what it really came down to is how you knocked each other down. And I felt like there were some good knockdowns for Lotso, with the fact that he's kind of a retread of Stinky Pete, that we'd seen those character beats before. Sid, as Lon said, the kind of knock against Sid was, is he aware? Is he consciously evil? Or, is he just doing what a kid does? And then with Syndrome, the idea that we've seen that kind of supervillain character before, self-aware, jealous of the superheroes, and in a really close argument. Strangely, I actually think, and it was really the closing from Perry that won me over, was the idea of the fact that he's effective, that he stays with you, that he does create these deformities. Now, whether or not he's aware of what he's doing is maybe a different argument, but as far as effectiveness and sticking with you, and you guys didn't really hit her as much on originality, which I think you both got hit on for your characters, how others had done it in a different way, and Perry's argument for originality with Sid kind of got to me. So I'm actually going to give Perry the point on that, which means, Ed, you and Perry are going to go into a sudden death tiebreaker to advance to the speed round. John, you are safe. You won't weigh in on this, but you are safe. You have 3 points. So Ed and Perry, you are going to go one-on-one here, and all right. Find a good one here. All right. So this is a 50-50 question. I will give you an option. If you both say the same answer, whomever says it first will get that answer. The other one will have to argue for the other answer. You both have 20 seconds and then 10-second rebuttals. And this point will not carry over, but the winner will advance to the speed round. You can only watch one of these movies. Which would you choose? Cars 2 or The Good Dinosaur?
The Good Dinosaur.
I heard Perry on The Good Dinosaur first, so Ed, you get Cars 2, but Perry's going to go first, so you get a little extra time to think your answer out. Perry, Cars 2, I'm sorry, Good Dinosaur, why would you select that one?
I selected The Good Dinosaur because even though it's not a Pixar favorite, it is still a well-done movie. It is beautifully shot and has a really moving story, and wow, even though Good Dinosaur is good, Cars 2 is god-awful. That is one of the dumbest sequel ideas I've ever seen. You have an effective character, Lightning McQueen, yet you decide to make your sequel with Tow Mater? Tow Mater of all things?
All right.
I personally think that they were going for sort of a weird True Lies with Cars type situation. And as a pitch, I bet you that's what got it over in the Pixar. We're like, it's like True Lies, but with cars. So I think even as a pitch, it works better than Caveman jumps on a dinosaur and meanders around for a while. Caveman did not live with dinosaurs, just as a basic fact.
Perry, 10 seconds.
That's why it's a really unique, moving story, how they come together. But I don't care if that was the pitch that was sold. It is a poorly executed movie. Those two genres should not have been mashed up at all. There is no fun in that.
Ed.
Well, The Good Dinosaur is bowel moving because it's shitty. I hate it. It's built on a big giant fallacy, and at least my movie took a daring swipe at incorporating genre.
Ooh, all right. Lon, I'm going to go to you.
Wow.
Based on those arguments, what did you think?
I actually think Cars 2 is not quite as bad as Reputation has it, so I was all set to go with Ed, but I really don't feel like he kind of gave me enough just from, the pitch would have been cool. It's like True Lies plus Cars, like, yeah, but that doesn't really say anything about the movie, so I got to go with Perry.
Richard, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that Ed's argument sort of just evolved into, it's bad, I don't like it. And he had Cars too, so he pretty much lost right out the gate.
Exactly.
I would agree.
So.
I think Ed, you got a little stuck in the premises and not so much defending your choice. So that means Perry, you get that.
Man.
You don't get the point, but you will move on to the speed round. However, John is still up 3-1, so you have a little work to do if you want to take the game.
Oh, wow.
Ed, I'm going to come to you, though. I want you to help me basically listen to these arguments and help me make these decisions on the speed round. So,
I'm not gonna check out, baby. I'm here.
same rules. You have 20 seconds to answer, 10-second rebuttals if it's a 50-50 option, or if you both choose the the same answer, whichever one of you says it first will get that answer. The second will have to have a backup answer. Are you guys ready?
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. Who's the better supporting character? Edna Mode from The Incredibles or Doug from Up?
Edna
Doug.
Mode.
Oh, there you
That
go.
works out.
Everyone gets their first choice. Perry, I heard you first with Edna Mode, so you will go first. 20 seconds whenever you begin speaking.
Edna Mode's the better character because everybody still talks about her. It's a perfect example of a supporting character that transcends the movie. Everybody loves her, and she is also a very effective supporting character because she drives the main characters. They wouldn't have achieved what they did without her help, both in designing their suits and motivating them to be better people and better superheroes and better family together. She is definitely the better character, a really unique design.
All right.
Edna Mode is a one-joke character who's only there to lay out exposition. Doug is actually a character who brings change into the movie with how the characters feel and react to the main plot. Squirrel, Doug is so much fun. He's funny. He has heart. He's in several scenes where you're like, in saying that he's not a memorable character, people know what that joke is, right? And they couldn't even find a voice actress for Edna Mode.
Doug is a super cute character, but he also repeats the same thing over and over, where Edna has nuance. She is very into her fashion, but she also knows that she needs to serve these heroes in a certain way so that they do better by what their job is. Without Edna, we wouldn't have the resurgence.
10 seconds.
Here we go. Make sure I have this.
Yep, no, take 10 whenever you're ready. This is called the Koijandro maneuver.
With Edna Mode, she's only doing this on a whim. Doug actually goes through a journey and has to defeat an alpha. He's more of a character. He actually has a beginning, middle, and end, and redemption, and a great ending where he gets to be with Russell for the rest of his life.
All right, that was a hard-fought battle. Ed, what do you think, based on those arguments?
I mean, the thing is, I feel like Perry was winning because she was saying things like Edna Mode drives the plot and things of that nature. But then John came from the shoe tops with a windmill dunk about how Doug, not only does he also help to drive the plot, but he also gets a satisfying resolution, and he's part of what the resolution is. Whereas Edna Mode does start the new age of superheroes, but is not integral to the ending.
So you're siding with John?
I have to side with John.
Right,
he got me in the big.
Lon, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree with that. I was all set to go with Edna Mode, and then John really convinced me in that last 10 seconds that Doug not only is an integral character but super fun. The squirrel line is really memorable. So yeah, I got to go with John.
Richard, your thoughts?
I don't know, because I do think that Doug is the better character, but I think that the question was best supporting character, and Perry did a better job of explaining why Edna Mode supported the main characters.
See, that's where I'm stuck. I think the first round easily, I'm with you guys, went to Perry. I think that she laid out the best opening argument, and particularly why Edna Mode supported those characters, her role in the overall story. John, you did have a great closing, and I can see why these guys might be swayed for it. It's very close, but I think I am actually going to go with Perry. I think that you did lay out why she was a better supporting character and not just a memorable character. So, Perry, you get that first point. You're still behind 3-2, but you are catching up.
Oh, man.
All right. Question number 2. What real-world toy should join the cast of Toy Story?
Legos.
Play-Doh.
Legos and Play-Doh. All right, John, you say Legos. Perry, you say Play-Doh. They rhyme. I can't wait to hear these. John, why Lego?
A lot of the toys that we've already gotten in these movies have been kind of just throwaway characters and look, you remember this, right? With Legos, you actually have an opportunity to do something different that Toy Story movies haven't done before, where they can actually have Legos move on their own and create entire cities that the characters can go in. So you don't just have a new character, you have a new setting, and you can actually have things happen, and they can be a villain, and they can imagine the toys having to fight Legos that turn into big things.
I'm going to go with a very similar argument and piggyback off of what he said and say the same is true of Play-Doh. It's a toy that everybody knows. It's a toy that can be manipulated and turned into new things. Where Play-Doh wins out over Lego is that we already have the Lego movie. There's no way Lego could possibly be incorporated, nor would they want to do that when there's a popular franchise that's already in existence. But Play-Doh, they can have at it, because kids, if you Google Play-Doh and Toy Story and all that stuff, they're building it.
John, 10-second rebuttal.
Yeah, if Toy Story could have Mattel figure out Barbie, they can totally do it with Legos, and they can actually make jokes about the Lego movie, and it can all be one big thing, whereas Play-Doh, it would be an animation nightmare. It'd be everywhere, and just wouldn't be as interesting.
I actually look at it as an animation challenge, and who's better at accepting challenges like that than Pixar? And I'm pretty sure we live in an industry where no studio is playing nice together. There's no doubt in my mind Warner Brothers would stop that.
Ooh, oh wow, that was that was back and forth. Lon,
Yeah,
let's start with you. What do you think?
Wow, I mean, interesting. They definitely both took it in a direction I would not have expected. I don't think John had a really good answer for Perry, though, that there is already a whole franchise about Legos and animating with Legos, and it does feel like it kind of would be more like merging these franchises than a Toy Story sequel, so I think I'm going with Perry.
Okay, Richard, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree completely. I hoped that the Lego movie thing would be brought up, and it was, and I don't think that John really rebutted it well enough, so I'm going to go with Perry.
All right, Ed, what do you think?
I would also agree that the Lego thing has no rebuttal, but my mind is going wild with a T-1000 Play-Doh dude rolling over and doing stuff.
Yeah.
That's sick, and I just feel like, on the basis of that, it's sicker than Legos, without even the Lego movie angle.
I was on the fence. I was leaning toward Perry, but I think you guys unanimously the whole thing was I didn't get a lot of what role Play-Doh would play, but I agree that the whole Lego movie thing very tough. I will go with you guys. I will side. It was a close decision for me anyway, and I will side with Perry and Plato. So that actually ties us up 3-3 with 3 questions left. Question number 3.
Inevitably, fidget spinners have come up several times on Twitter.
I'm sure.
Oh, and
Fidget
may I
spinners
just-
come up everywhere.
Inevitably.
Yeah, and may I just, we got this question, and it was ticked off of the original list. My pick was going to be Skeletor, because just having one dude wandering around looking for his enemy the whole time and not being able to find him and trying to find some new ways to be evil, I thought that'd be good.
This is a fun question. What famous person's brain should be the setting for Inside Out 2?
Jimmy Neutron.
Famous person's brain.
Famous person, famous character.
Does it have to be Pixar appropriate?
It is the Inside Out 2, so it will be a Pixar film.
I'm gonna say George Lucas.
All right. So we have Inside Out 2 set in either Jimmy Neutron or George Lucas's brain. I love it already.
I like that.
John, Jimmy Neutron, tell me about it.
One of the amazing things about Jimmy Neutron is that his emotions guide everything he does, but he's also very logical. So you can have this conflict between the science and the having to be a little bit, callous, but fighting with emotion and empathy. You can bring in new emotions that they didn't have in the Inside Out movie, like love, because you already have a great love interest and his best friend, what's her name, Sally?
All right,
I think George Lucas's brain would be an excellent setting for a full movie because look at the emotional roller coaster that guy's been on. You probably have emotions changing places at that control board all the time, and could you imagine what his personality islands might look like? I mean, not even just a Star Wars island, but all the incredible movies that he's created where it speaks to his creativity, and he has just delivered an incredible body of work that would be in there.
10 seconds.
George Lucas is too many archetypes though, and it's too much Star Wars, it's too much Indiana Jones, and stuff that this should be a Pixar movie with original ideas and a real conflict at the center of it. It should be emotion versus logic. That's what would make it a good Pixar movie.
Yeah, but mine would be a lot more fun to watch than that because not only do you have Star Wars and Indiana Jones, you have things like American Graffiti. He is a human person, and think about all the creatures that would exist where Bing Bong lives. How many creatures must George Lucas have come up with?
Oof, all right, I'm leaning one way. Richard, quickly, which way would you go?
Yeah, I mean, George Lucas is the one that I would see, but we did establish that this is going to be a real Pixar movie, and I think that John did a really good job of selling the emotional aspects of it, so I would go with Jimmy Neutron.
Lon?
Yeah, I mean, I have to concede that I think Jimmy Neutron makes more logical sense, but I really want to see this George Lucas brain movie. I got to admit, I feel like that's the one that stands out to me. Is I am curious about what that movie would be.
Ed, what do you think?
I mean, if the criteria is strictly what would be an easy to make Pixar movie
based on these arguments,
but based on these arguments, it's George Lucas all the way. Because you got me with the where Bing Bong lives. That stupid green version of Chewbacca is chilling out down there. A blue Yoda who's like a yodeler or something is down there. Lightsabers that have 15, that look like jacks. Oh, there's so many things down there.
See,
so yeah,
I'm torn. I kind of disagree because I think that John kind of sold me on what the movie itself would be, which would be logic versus emotion. That for me sold me on a better movie. Other than Perry, I get the Star Wars stuff, and I kind of know what would be in your movie, but I feel like John actually sold me a little bit better on what the movie itself would be. So I think I'm actually going to side with John on this one, with Jimmy Neutron. So that leaves us down to John. If you win this, you win the game. Perry, if you get this point, we will go to the final question. Let's make it a good one. What Pixar movie would you want to live in?
Incredibles.
Incredibles.
Up.
Up. All right. So Perry would like to live in The Incredibles. John would want to live in Up. Perry, I heard you first. You'll go first.
What person has not dreamed of living in a world where superheroes exist? And it doesn't have to be a situation where I could be a superhero. I could either be a normal person being inspired by superheroes and all of their acts and not turn into a syndrome. And then there's also people like Edna Mode who can create and find something that they love to support them. There's just so many possibilities to do something really special and important with your life.
All right, John, Up.
Well, first of all, as established in Incredibles, there aren't superheroes around anymore, just supervillains. I don't live in that kind of environment, too dangerous. So with Up, you get to have dogs that can talk. And also, not only could I be able to talk to my dog, which would be way more interesting than other people getting superpowers that I don't get to have, is that I get to live in this world full of amazing shape language, where people are the shape of things that like represent them, where Russell's like an egg.
I would much rather live on the edge in a dangerous world than one that makes me sad all the time. And God forbid Doug's collar breaks. Who is there to fix it? And then you've just eliminated the coolest part of being in an Up movie is a talking dog.
The very fact that this technology exists is great, but in Incredibles, you have AI that can defeat any of the supers. I don't want to live in a dangerous world because I want to live, and I want to hang out with a dog. I want to live in a world where that technology exists and I could actually use it.
Ooh, Richard, what do you think?
I don't know. I gotta be honest, I don't really love either of those picks because I feel like outside of the adventures of the movie, those are basically both just Earth. Right? So I think that Perry sold me on like Earth. Whoever, I just completely forgot who had which movie, but whoever wasn't Incredibles, I would side with because I think it was you, right?
John,
sorry.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Hi. No, I would go against Incredibles if only because, like you said, it's too dangerous there. And I feel like that's sort of a negative, and other than that, neither of them really had any negatives or positives.
Ed, what do you think?
If I was a superhero, certainly The Incredibles #1. But damn it, living in Up. I mean, I picked Up in one of the early rounds, because I really like that movie. So the shape language thing is really cool. Talking to dogs is super cool, and just imagine the adjunct technology that would come out of that.
I have to agree. I think that the idea of being too dangerous and also the idea of talking to dogs and everything, that sounded like a bit of a cooler world to me, so I'm going to give John the point, which means John wins Pixar Fights. Congratulations. But congratulations to everybody here. Thank you. This is such a fun fight, such a great fight.
I've ever done in my life.
You were built for this, man.
Guys, thank you so much for coming in. Ed, where can people find you? Ed Greer.
Ed Greer Destroys on all social media. That's my handle. So that DeviantArt. I am an artist as well as a comic. So you can go check out my art on there. And I do a podcast called Nerd Goat. It was just ranking the greatest characters from fiction of all time.
Awesome. Check Ed out. Podcast art, a Renaissance man, a man of many talents. Perry, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at PNemeroff, and I'm all over the Collider Videos YouTube channel.
John Negroni, obviously looking out for Pixar Theory 2.0, but where can people find you in the meantime?
If you're interested in Pixar Theory stuff, it's all on johnnegroni.com, or just find me on Twitter. I'm always doing stuff at John Negroni. I also host a podcast called Cinemaholics for We Got This Covered. I think you already mentioned it, where we talk about movies, and sometimes I am like super insufferable. And and then there's a Pixar Theory book and all that stuff. You can find it everywhere. Yeah.
If there's anything that the personalities here on Screen Junkies can relate to, it's that sometimes we're all a little insufferable. Just in general. I know that I get very angry sometimes on the show. Lon Harris on the couch. Richard Higginbotham, thank you for joining us on the fan cam.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Where can people find you on Twitter? Or?
You can find me across town at the Wrong Defy building.
Yes.
And you can also find me on YouTube. I did a fan-made honest trailer for Movie Fights. So,
awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
So you can find that. Andy tweeted it, so apparently it's good or something. So find that, and then while you're there, stick around on my channel and subscribe because I need more views and stuff.
Awesome.
Nice.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us for Pixar Fight. Thank you for watching at home. If you're watching on Screen Junkies Plus, we will be doing a quick after the fight in just a few minutes, so stay tuned for that. If you're wondering about the belt match between myself and Mike Carlson, that will be happening in early July. We will be announcing that date soon, but don't worry, we didn't forget me versus Carlson one-on-one. Until then, you can find me on Twitter at MerleDan. Thank you to our panel. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.